3 minutes in, can I introduce you to James Byrne, who is going to give us the demonstration today. Just turn your microphone on, James, and then we are good to go. So, as I said, James is going to do a demonstration of software. As we go through, please feel free to ask any questions that you've got, and I'll fire them at James in order to make sure that we get maximum value out of the session. And as always, James, we're going to start with a virtual round of applause for James. Go.
Thanks very much, Simon. Yeah, so I'm James Byrne. I head up Accountancy Manager. I'm going to take you guys through a short demo in a little while. It's great that we've got a number of questions that have come in to Simon before the event, so we'll get a chance to answer some of those as well. What I'll do now is I'll share my screen and we will just bring up the slides that we've got available. So Simon, can you confirm that that's up and visible?
Yes, I can see those. And just to acknowledge David's question, I've got that question, David, and I'll bring that up once we've gone through. And Paul, your question is reasonably similar to David, so I'll make sure I'll get those both answered at the same time as well.
Fantastic. Okay, so again, for everybody that's attended the webinar today, we will do a special offer for new customers coming on board. We're gonna drop the price down to £29 per user per month, and that will sit in place for the next 12 months for anybody that wants to sign up off the back of this webinar. So going on then. So we've got me there with a haircut at that time. My hair's grown quite a lot since then, so struggling to find a hairdresser and not willing to let my partner cut my hair, who keeps offering. I'm not sure it'll turn out too well. So I've been introduced into the accountancy profession. I was introduced to the accountancy profession back in 2010 by my father. He was a senior district tax inspector for HMRC. And in '97, he set up an accountancy practice. I came on board in 2010, and one of my roles was to help grow the practice. And in growing that practice, it identified a number of inefficiencies from onboarding the clients to the administration, including chasing clients for information. And ultimately, I wanted to be spending my time as a fee earner, invoicing our clients. And so I wanted to find a more efficient way of doing things, and unable to find something that brought everything under one roof. Accountancy Manager was born. I teamed up with a close friend of mine, who's the CTO at Accountancy Manager, and he sat alongside me in that accountancy practice, literally building solutions as problems arose. And I think that's the big difference between maybe Accountancy Manager and some of the other products that are out there, is that this really was built by accountants, in an accountancy practice. And so it tends to work in the way that you would expect as an accountant or as a bookkeeper. So the main things we're going to go through then are what Accountancy Manager is able to do for you, and that starts with onboarding the client, going through to the workflows and the task list, as well as automation and some of those automation features. And where we're trying to position ourselves at the moment is very much as an app stack. So we would see ourselves sitting as the foundation of your practice, and everything else should be able to plug into that. And the more time that goes by, the more integrations we're bringing in. So there's a few slides here just about data that we've gathered. We've asked a number of customers, and actually these ones are from Free Agent. We did a joint webinar with Free Agent, and they've allowed us to share their slides. And some of the questions that they asked was, what's the most enjoyable part of your work? And 41% of those said helping clients grow their business, 39% solving problems, 10% being an expert in my field, and then we've got a few others there as well. Some interesting data, and it goes on to what's the most time-consuming part of your work? And 53% said chasing up information. And the great thing about Accountancy Manager is that it obviously tackles that quite nicely. Sorting out messy bugs, correcting client mistakes, and other data entry, completing tax returns, which is obviously other software out there to do those jobs. And how's your workload been since the start of March? So these were questions that we asked our users, and 58% of them said that the workload had increased significantly. Just under 30% there increased slightly, and the rest obviously some smaller figures as well. And what's been the biggest challenge since the start of March? So we've got 63% there updating clients on government support as we'd expect. 13% saying working from home and childcare. I know that's certainly one of mine. I've got two young children, and trying to split that time between looking after the kids and doing my job here at Accountancy Manager is tricky at the best of times. We might even have my son running in his pants or something partway through the webinar, which I hope doesn't happen. Hopefully he's being looked after in the other room. So what else have we got here? How's Accountancy Manager helped you most since the start of March? And 47%, so nearly half of our customers that answered this survey said that bulk emails, a quarter of them saying task and deadline management, 11% document sharing, some at time tracking. Not everybody uses the time tracking feature, but I'd like to talk about that a little bit more, maybe a bit further down the line as we look at the demo. And so what about you? So have you found your practice management system sufficient whilst working remotely? You know, we had a few questions in there, which I think we were going to do we've done it as a poll on previous webinars, and the conditions have highlighted inefficiencies, and we're thinking about alternative solutions was one of the most answered on the poll. So what I'm going to do next then is I'm going to take us on to provide a demo, and that's probably going to raise lots of questions in itself. So we'll get on with the demo. It is a 5-minute video, but it's probably going to take me about 15 minutes to go through, because I'll stop and pause it and talk through it as we go. So I'll just enlarge the screen. And the place we're going to start at with this is adding new clients into the system. And we're going to use the example of adding a limited company client, which means that we can show off the company's house feature. Now, that's not to say that you can't add sole traders and self-assessment clients. One of the queries that came in before the webinar was that why isn't there an option to add in a sole trader client? The answer to that is that you simply add them in as a self-assessment client, and then in the options you have accounts as one of the services, and you can obviously put the details in there. So of course we've allowed the system to deal with self-assessment and sole trader accounts, as well as companies and partnerships and all the other client types that you would expect. So let's get started with this, and I'll talk through the demo. It's been a little while since I've done one of these, so so bear with me, and I'll get going with it. I'm just going to mute the sound as well, actually. There we go. So starting off on the overview page there, but we're going to go straight in and go to add a new client. And by using the company's house feature, we can enter in the company name, and it will give us a selection of companies to choose from. We can then select that company and also choose who we wish to appoint as the main director. And that will pull in all of those details into Accountancy Manager on the client file page here. We can see it brings in the names, and it also brings in the accounts and returns dates as well. We've matched the HMRC year ends to the company house year ends. Unfortunately, HMRC are a bit limited in the API they provide us in terms of integration, although we are keeping a close eye on HMRC to do as much as we can with them in the coming months and years. So moving on from there, we've obviously got confirmation statements being brought in as well, and services required. So at this stage here, being able to select the services that are required for your client, and also putting some fee structures in there as well. If you don't charge a fixed fee like is being shown in the demo, you can enter annual or monthly fees as well. It doesn't show it on the demo page here, but just further down from there, it would. And at this stage as well, you're also getting the option, as you turn on these services, it's also bringing those services down under the staff tasks section, and it allows you to actually appoint a staff user to those particular tasks so that it will start appearing on their task list. So at the point of entering your client's details and selecting the services, you're also appointing the staff user who's going to be responsible for those, and the task list is being built up in the background as this process is going through. Now on here we can see a new feature that we brought in recently, which was that you can actually add this client, not just add it, but also create the onboarding workflow, which is set up as a template. We've created one for you and you can just use that one, or you can go into the templates and edit those workflow templates along with all the other templates that we've generated into the system. One of the big differences about Accountancy Manager and other products on the market is that we provide an out-of-the-box solution. I know that when I was working in practice, I wouldn't have had time to have set up all the templates in a new software, and so to have a system that already gives you those and you can go in and edit and change and make suitable to your own practice seemed to make sense. So we took a lot of that work on for you. So if you were to go on and add that onboarding workflow, this is an example of one. I don't think that's the one that we've now got in the system, but we can see here some of the items on there. The parent task being the client onboarding, but then the subtasks, the workflow tasks showing underneath there.
James, I just whilst you pause, I got on that when you went on the were you setting it up and you was allocating the accounts to a staff member? Is that staff member then responsible for the whole of that accounts job, or can you? Because I see on there you've got Lauren and John now since it's since you moved on. Can you allocate different stages of that job to different people, or is it all go to one person?
You have an owner of the task itself, but then you can obviously separate out who would be responsible for the subtasks. Although in saying that, the workflow feature as it stands is going under quite a big rework. So the way it will work in the future is a bit different from this, in that you'll actually be able to do it more in the way that you're suggesting, which is allocate those tasks, the subtasks specifically to those other users, as opposed to just having them viewed here that actually somebody else is responsible for them. But it's the parent task, the client onboarding task, that's what you're setting up there in terms of on the client page that I was on previously, and you're selecting which staff member is going to be responsible for the task overall.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you. And then Andrew, I've got your question, and that in the integration thing we'll definitely talk about. So I acknowledge your question, Andrew, and then Jamie, we're going to talk about the emails as well and some links and how that works. So I acknowledge your question, and if we don't, we'll definitely get to it. And the same, Andy, I've got yours. And so Andy's asked, when will the workflow be available, James? Do you know?
So the main change that we're going to release imminently is that you're going to have target dates as well as the deadline dates that currently show in the system. We're bringing in target dates, and that's the first change to the task list that we're going to bring in, because although you can filter the task list in a number of different ways, and we'll see some of those options in just a moment, target date is going to be brought in first, and those more comprehensive workflow features that I think a lot of people will find beneficial, we're probably talking in the next 6 months. It's quite a big overhaul of the entire way that the task list system works. So I wouldn't want to give any exact timeframes on that, because as most people may know, with software development, things can go wrong and you need to make sure that you do adequate testing and things. So it's going to take some time on rebuilding the workflow module, but in the meantime, we're going to bring out the target dates, which seems to be a highly requested feature from our users.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you. And a subsequent question from Andy. Do you know what it's going to look like yet?
I have got the designs that have been sent over by the developers that I've worked on them with to get how we want it. So I do have the designs, but until we get a bit further down the line, I would rather not share those designs, because they might change. I mean, they shouldn't, but they might. I know, having been doing this for a little while now, how things seem to constantly change as you go through the process. And we're trying to ensure that we're an agile software company where we can change things easily and quickly, going forwards.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you. And then just whilst I've got you on Jamie's question, with regards to mass emails, I don't know whether the system's got the ability to send the emails out yet, but can you send emails to people that have certain types of services?
Yeah,
So can
yeah,
you,
exactly.
yeah, so you can
Yeah, so
email payroll clients about a
yeah.
furlough update, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the examples I always used to use in the early days of AM actually was because one of the features we've always had is to email all and send out newsletters and things, was when HMRC changed to having flat rate VAT. And so you could isolate not just the VAT clients, but also the VAT flat rate clients and just email those guys. So absolutely, you can email them in sections depending on the services and the types of service that they're receiving.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you. And then the rest of the question I've got at the minute integration questions, which I know we're going to get to. So I'll let you carry on then, James. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so onboarding. So I'm aware, and this kind of is maybe where the integration is going to touch on. I'm aware there are other products out there which currently are not able to be used with Accountancy Manager, and I might as well touch on it briefly now. James Ashford at Go Proposal, I am in talks with him. We set up a plan last year to make that happen, and then we had to restructure our development team because we grew it quite significantly. So we had to hold that back. I've got a call scheduled with James in June, and we're looking to try and get something in place for Q3 of this year. The same goes for Practice Ignition with Trent McLaren. I've also been on the phone with him. Both integrations are on the roadmap and will be taking place in the next quarter. That's the plan. In the meantime, though, and lots of people do use Accountancy Manager without using external softwares, and we have deliberately tried to bring everything under one roof where we can to help save costs. And so what I'm going to take you through now is that onboarding process. We've added the client into the system, and the next stage then is going to take us on to onboarding that client.
So just before you do that, James, can I just say to Paul, I think that's answered your question, Paul. If it hasn't about Go Proposal, if it hasn't, then obviously answer it again, but I'm going to mark it done.
Okay, so what we can see is, having added the client, you then get the option to send the proposal email. Again, this is set up as a template. We've provided templates throughout the system, as I've already mentioned. You can change this around. Maybe you don't want the fee showing in it, but the services, because you ticked them automatically, they've been pulled into the onboarding email that's going to be sent out. And you get a few options with the fees. And if you wanted to, you could just have the monthly fee showing as well. Again, that's an option if you've entered that figure, and you might want to show them inclusive or exclusive of VAT. So a few options there. You can change the text around, write whatever you like. But further down the email, what we can see, it's going to show us those options there quickly now, is as we send, did you want to say something, Simon?
Yeah, I just got a question on the emails, and I don't know whether this is the right place to ask it, but when are you changing the email format from rich text? So is it set up as rich text at the moment? Could it be HTML or plain text?
That would be more of a question for support than myself. I don't know how it's set up in the system. I know that in terms of, if we're talking email settings, which I know has been one of the questions, Simon, that came in beforehand, then it's a case of it links with any major email provider, and you just enter your SMPT details in as well as your forwarding addresses, and then it will send those emails out of Accountancy Manager as though it's sending it from your existing email servers. So it doesn't come from Accountancy Manager. It comes from you guys through your email servers, exactly as it would do previously. Brilliant. I don't know if that really answers what you want there, Simon, but it might be a question for support to give a bit more.
What I'll do, Abu, is I'll make a note, obviously, so James can concentrate on what he's doing. When I go away, I'll make a note and make sure that gets looked at for you, Abu. Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
So what's happened here is it's taken us on to the client's email, if you like. It's taken us into the client's Gmail folder, and they're going to click on their email. And what they can see here is one of the key areas of this email, which is the online registration process. And all they need to do here is click on that link. And straight away, then they're going to be brought straight into Accountancy Manager, where they can go on. And the Accountancy Manager portal can be branded up with all your own colors and your own logos and everything. So if you wish the client to engage with it in a way that looks like it's come directly from you guys, that's absolutely fine. And the letters of engagement, which we originally brought in making sure that we were in line with the ACCA and AAT, and we're actually in the middle of doing the review of those at the moment, having got hold of some more ACCA letter of engagement templates, which we're just cross-referencing against what we've got in our system. So we provide these as part of our service. One of the great things about it is that depending on the services that you select for the specific client, it will actually pull in the text for each specific service. So again, there's no need to go in and do any work there. Once you've got them set up as the template, then for the clients, depending on what services you're providing, it will pull in the correct letter of engagement. And on here, we can see that they simply tick to agree, and then they can type in their name for the e-signature. And that gets stored on your end, as well as them receiving a copy on their end as well. And what we can see here then is they then get the option to go on and create a client portal. Now, not every accountant uses the client portals. I think we've got about 100,000 client portals across the UK that are using our system. It is really beneficial from a GDPR perspective, as well as being able to e-sign documents. And you can only do that if your clients are set up with the portal. Now, if they've signed the letter of engagement and they don't go further than that, then what it does in Accountancy Manager on your end is it changes the client from being a prospect to a client automatically. So as soon as they sign those letters of engagement, they go from prospect to client. Now, if they go a little bit further on from here, and there's obviously lots of benefits to this next feature, they enter their password that they wish to use and they submit, and then they get presented with their company details, if they're a company, or their self-assessment details. And it gives them the opportunity to fill in some of those key pieces of information that you were unable to get off them on the phone. I remember when I was going through this process, when I was working in practice, things like company UTR numbers and company's house authorization codes, you wouldn't usually get them in the early stage of a call with your customer. And so by them logging in and maybe having to dig around their office, they're now able to obtain this information and enter it for you. And that minimizes the amount of missing information you end up with in your system, particularly when you're going to complete a set of accounts and you suddenly realize you don't have the company's house authorization code, which is a nightmare. So they can enter these details in here, lots of details that they might want to enter. If you've already entered the details, they'll already show that these have already been entered, and all the client has to go in and do is enter the missing information that isn't shown yet. Now, as they go through that process, one of the great features in Accountancy Manager is sending out the clearance letter to the previous accountant. So if your client does go in and they do have a previous accountant, they can put in the previous accountant's email address in here, and our system will automatically send out the clearance emails to their previous accountant. And again, that's a template email that we've done for the clearance. You can go in and edit that as you want. And that email will get sent on a regular basis, as regular as you want to set it to, until the information is received. Because let's be honest, which accountant is really prioritizing the clients which are leaving them? Maybe it shouldn't be like that, but it does tend to be the way when you want to be focusing on the clients that you're earning fees from. So that's why the system is automatically sending out those requests to gather that information. And as soon as it's received, simply tick that you've received the information and those reminders stop going out. And that's the same kind of process that we have for record requesting as well, which we'll touch on. So going on from there, we've got a few other bits and pieces that they might want to enter. Now, it's worth mentioning as well, if they do enter information or they change something maybe that you'd already put in, maybe a phone number or an address, you'll have a time log on the timeline in the client's file, which will be shown to you in a moment. And that just makes sure that any information that your clients have entered, you've got the log of what it was previously and what it is now. And that goes the same for if your staff users have changed any information on those client files. There's always a log of all that data that's been changed to and from. Now, where we've gone to now is we've gone into the actual client's portal. Now, we don't see the banner across the top there, but the banner across the top would actually have your logo branded on there if you've chosen for it to be so. And we've also got then the landing page. Now, the landing page, in my opinion, is a replacement of the welcome email that you might have sent out previously when your clients came on board. Instead, what you have here is you have the welcome page. Again, fully editable. It's a template. We've stuck it in there for you. The sorts of things that we know accountants are looking to make their clients aware of in the early stage of onboarding them. You can also see the document portal at the top left-hand side there. They can review their deadlines, so they're not constantly asking you when their deadlines are. And those are the main features in there, as well as obviously being able to sign documents that come in that would be, they'd be sent notifications into the portal and an email as well. So as we I think it takes us now back. Yeah, it takes us back into your portal again. So that's the client's portal. There's some videos around the client's portal as well that you can share with your clients to make sure that they're utilizing it correctly, and they're not falling down on any of the information that they need to be aware of. And what we can see here is that you immediately get sent a notification having had your client go through that process. There's a nice bell icon at the top there, and we can see that one of the notifications there then says that they've agreed and signed your terms of engagement. Now you can just go ahead and archive that notification. And we can also see, as I'd already mentioned, that here you can see what they've changed from and to, all the details in one place on a notification in case you want to go ahead and check that. And again, we're going to archive that notification as well. So a self-generating task list. So having got all of this information into the system, it's automatically pulled in all of those details for that client and set up the tasks for it as well. And you can filter this task list in a number of different ways. We're isolating just accounts as the service there. My favorite deadline was always 30-day deadlines, then records received, because that's what I was always most focused on. And what we can see there is we can see a nice run there of black for overdue, red for due on the day, there's orange for due within 7 days, and sorry, yellow for due within 7 days, orange for due within 7 days, and yellow for due within 30. And anything else that's not coloured is after that 30-day period. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a little look down here, and we can see that we've got British Gas Trading Limited, the one that we entered, that was the new prospect. They've become a client. And there's a key symbol here. There's a nice red exclamation mark. Now, what that means is you are missing a key piece of information, which is going to stop you from completing and filing these accounts. And if we just allow it to click that there, you click on the icon, and we can see it says missing company's house authorization code. Now, for any missing information in the system, again, you can turn on the automation settings to allow the system to actually send an email to your clients requesting these missing pieces of information on a regular basis, again, until they enter them into their client portal, or if you're not using the client portals, to send them out to you by email maybe. So one of the other options on here is the progress note. So you can update the progress note, and we're going to update this one to records received. And in doing that, it's automatically pushed it all the way up into the order of the records received, other tasks that you've got sat there. So that happens all automatically. Now, if you had gone along and completed that task as well, then if you'd gone ahead and completed that task, then it would return the task back around to the next period. So again, you're never having to go in and manually do this with the tasks. If they're compliance tasks that have set deadlines that are quarterly or annually or monthly or whatever it might be, the system automatically takes that into consideration when you complete a task. Now, I'm just going to jump through the workflow quickly, mainly because the way that we're redesigning it is not going to look like that, and so I'm not going to show off that workflow in the way that it's been done in that demo video. And instead, I'm going to jump on to the communication side of things. So we can see here that sending communications such as SMS is an option in Accountancy Manager. Unlike some of our competitors, maybe we can allocate you with a phone number. You can message your customers from the system, and they can respond to those messages as well, which is really great because all that you get sent a notification if they have sent you a text message back, and all of those text messages to and from are being stored in the client's timeline. Now, if you don't want them to respond, that's fine too. We can allocate you with a phone number that means that when they receive the text message, your name will actually come up, which can't be done on the other, in the other way that I've just talked about. But your name would come up, they'd know who it had come from in that sense, and then they can't respond to it. So 2 options on the SMS side of things. It is a cost to us, so we just charge that cost back to you guys. I think it works out at about 5 pence a text message. We tend to do some bundle deals and things along the way that can relieve some of that cost. So going on from the SMS, obviously you've still got the options with the email as well to communicate with your customers, which we've talked a little bit about. And one of the great things here that I've talked about a number of times now is the timeline. So this is the audit trail of communication between you and your client. Not just that, but also anything that you're talking about with your staff members. So if you're communicating with your staff members about a specific client, that information gets stored on the timeline as well. We can also see any field changes, as I mentioned earlier, emails, SMS, log time, just notes and logs or documents as well there. So you can isolate any data onto that timeline and search the timeline for pieces of information as well. One of the great features in AM.
James,
Yes,
just while that moves on, Andy has asked, will we be in the future be able to select the emails that are in the timeline and resend them?
Yeah, I do have quite a comprehensive plan around the emailing side of things. We want to actually have an email inbox, which would allow you to tag emails, change them around a bit, as well as having some more, and when I say tag, I mean be able to tag them to specific team members, or maybe tag them so that they appear in specific timelines, as well as be able to, from the timeline, be able to respond, resend emails, and other features like that. So it's quite a big development process. Partly the reason is that the list of developments that we've got are is quite humongous, and that's why we've just taken on another 3 developers, 2 of which are starting at the beginning of July. So the development team's grown to a team of 9, and that should really give us a good boost to get a lot of these additional features out there that we want to improve or bring out new features as we're going along.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you.
So moving on then from the timeline side of things, we're just going to have a quick look at the automation settings here. So we can see here, automatic record requesting, big one. And one of the things that we have, which I haven't seen any of our competitors having, is the automatic part records chasing. Now, I love this feature because I'm sure many of you will have experienced a situation where your clients maybe send you the bank statements and they miss off the last bank statement of the period, which means that you can't possibly complete their accounts. And so what we did is we came up with a way, we wanted to find a way, how can we automate this process still, even when they haven't provided all the information? And it was very simple once we'd got it in place, which was that rather than selecting records received on the task itself, you select part records received, and a little box comes up. And in that box, you can simply enter in all the missing pieces of information and save it. And that automation request for those records continues to go out. It's set, and it's a template. So you can change the wording a bit here, but it says something along the lines of, thanks for the information that you provided to us. However, we're still missing the following, and then lists everything that you've written in that box. And the automation will continue to send out on a regular basis, as regularly again as you wish for it to. So a great little feature there, again, to avoid you guys having to monitor that process on a regular basis. Automatic approval chasing, I love that one. 31st of January deadlines, and you've got 100 self-assessment tax returns that haven't been approved, and so having that feature in there to automatically chase them for those approvals along the way is fantastic. Automatic previous accounts clearance chasing, we've talked about that. Automatic tax payment reminders. So we often find that our clients, I remember clients would blame us if we hadn't reminded them to, what their tax payment was and when to pay it by. When we completed the accounts, we gave them all the information in the email, and we told them when they had to pay it by, but because for some reason we didn't remind them at the 31st of July, maybe for self-assessment payment, they put the blame on us. And so to have a system in here that constantly reminds them to pay their tax until they've made the payment is just another great little feature, and it just makes you guys look better, which is just another cool feature in AM. Automatically sending SMS alongside emails. We know that SMS, people have always got their phones on them these days, and to have SMS being sent out rather than just emails alongside those emails to alert them to certain things is quite a handy little feature as well. Automatically request missing details like those UTRs, we talked about that. Agent authorization codes before they expire. So one of the other big headaches we had was, we'd send out the agent authorization codes and they'd expire, and then you'd have to go through the whole process all over again. Now you can complete the 64-8 in AM. Obviously there's been some changes with MTD and HMRC, and I know it was a query that came in, so we are working to change that slightly to improve that functionality, and that you can still use it for the non-MTD items, and the agent authorization codes are set up so that it reminds the client right up until the day of the expiry, and again you can do that as regularly as you like as well. SMS meeting reminders to avoid no-shows, and one of my favorites was the deadline day SMS manager. So if I've got company house accounts that are due on the 31st of May and I'm expecting one of my team members to have completed that and they haven't been, then I would get sent a text message at 9 a.m. that morning saying this still hasn't been filed, or maybe it's just some it's fallen down a hole somewhere, and it just stops me getting any penalties. So another cool little feature in there. So keep track of missing client details. So this was what we talked about a little bit of already. So this is sending out automated emails to clients who haven't provided all of their information. And the templates that we've given you, they're not really basic templates. They don't just list these items off. They go into depth to go as far as actually say, we're missing your self-assessment UTR number. It's found on HMRC correspondence, which is found in the top right-hand corner, and it looks like this. And if you still can't find that that document, then here's the phone number to call HMRC, because as we know, if they can't give us the UTR number, we can't speak to HMRC on their behalf. So it goes into quite a bit of detail for some of those items, and you can have a look at those templates in the template section as well. And you can email all of your customers if you want, and put them all on the email queue for which you're missing information for, and do it all at once if you want to do it manually rather than have the automated emails going out on a regular basis. Emails that go into the queue, you can pause the queue. So if you're like, oh my goodness, I've got a load of emails and that I didn't actually want to send, you can pause the queue and leave it paused until you're comfortable. Maybe you make some edits on some of those emails and then you can send them out. So you've got quite a lot of control over those emails that get put into the queue. We've got the 64.8 agent authorization, which we've talked about. The second part of this demo is a little bit quicker than the first part, so sorry to have gone on and hopefully I haven't covered too much information in such a short space of time. Fee projections and breakdown. So if you are using AM for invoicing, then you can see on here the different staff members, what they're invoicing, and you can also see which clients they're responsible for as well. Down here we've got Lauren's clients. We can see what her total annual revenue that she's going to be able to bring into the company is going to be. One of the great features about the Xero integration that we recently finished off is that you can import all the invoices from Xero, and that will help with things like the client profitability side of things, which I think it touches on in just a moment. If it doesn't, we can talk about that if people have got queries around it. And we also got the QuickBooks integration. I know that as I'm going through, it's reminding me of some of the integrations. I apologise that it's taken a lot longer than expected for those people that have been waiting for it. As I've said, we had to restructure the whole development team in the way that we did things because of the growth of the company, and now we're in a really strong position. And the QuickBooks development's been being worked on for the last few months, and it's in its final stages. I will get told off by the development team if I provide any exact time frames. But I do know that off the back of the Xero integration, that helped us quite a lot with our QuickBooks integration. And I certainly expect in the next few months for us to be in beta. And we know that from the Xero integration going into beta, it was only a matter of weeks before we sent that live across everybody's systems. So we're really not far off. And apologies for those that have been waiting for it for a long time. So time tracking for work and calls and different pieces of work. We have a time tracking feature in here. Now, lots of accountants might not think they need to use the time tracking feature because they don't charge for time. However, if you want to track profitability, then you're going to need to know how long each task is taking. And the great thing about the task list is on the task list, there's a simple button that when you're starting a VAT return, you can just hit that button and it starts recording the time in a new tab. And then once you've completed that task, you can simply go in, end the time log, and it stores that time log in the client's file. And if you make it chargeable, if you do charge for time, it will actually store it in the work in progress section of the system as well. Yes, Simon.
I've got a question from Paul on that. Will there be a pause button on the time tracker?
Yeah. So in the rebuild of the workflow, because it's all related to the same area, my plan is to have I don't know if anybody's seen what they've got on Free Agent and maybe some other systems as well, where it actually has the sort of pause and play, and you can see that time actually going up from the task list directly. And that's the idea, is that we will have a stop, pause, play from the task list directly without having to go into the time logs as a separate job.
Thank you.
See who's currently logging time in real time. So may be beneficial for remote working at the moment. If we want to see how your team are getting on, we've got a live team view here. You can actually see if they're currently logging time, which is a nice benefit. And also we can see here that Angela's not logging any time, might be worth a phone call or something along those lines. So quite a handy oversight of the business into what's going on if you are logging time for tasks or other jobs, of course. Internal team notification system. So a bit like an intranet, then we've got this sort of localized communication system where you can send notifications between you and your other team members. We can also see that you can select multiple team members here. You can relate it to a client. If you do relate it to a client, it will store it on their timeline. And also, if it's related to a task as well, then you can sort of go into the task and actually send messages directly from the task as well. Now, if we've selected this particular notification as an urgent notification, then it will appear in a red banner across the top of your other team members' screen. And it doesn't matter which page they navigate to, the red banner will remain in place until they deal with it. So clicking on the red banner will simply bring up the notification in this example, and it might be that you want to respond or forward it on to another team member or create a task off the back of the notification, which again is a wicked little feature, or just go ahead and archive that notification if you've dealt with it. AMLID checks, another great feature, certainly for the onboarding process, especially during this remote working scenario for those that weren't remote working previously and maybe not able to meet your clients. If you can't meet the clients in person, this is certainly a great way to get their passport numbers or driving license numbers and do the whole process remotely without actually having to see them in person. We offer credits. I think it starts at £3.75 per credit if you buy 5 credits at a time, and it goes right down to £1.75 if you buy as many as 500 credits at a time. Great feature, and quite a lot of our users use the AML ID checks, and you get a pass or fail and a document that gets provided for each one, and those get stored in the client files, I believe, as well. So easily filtering the client list. So this is in the area that you go to maybe filter different categories of client depending on services. You can add many different or many extra columns in here if you want. And then you can select the different types of clients that you want, and then you can go to the email all and email that category all at once. I know, we had a 430% increase in March time off the back of people going into lockdown, and then accountants having to provide information to their clients, and our email sending facility from this kind of a system went through the roof. So mass email and SMS functionality, so we've kind of talked about that, and we've got the email all there. Invoicing and work in progress for those that do want to use it. As I said already, if you do log time and you've marked it as chargeable, it will appear on the work in progress record, and you can clear it or go ahead and obviously generate your invoices. And the sync with Xero and the same way that it's working with QuickBooks is it's two-way. So you can push all that to Xero in the same way that you can pull it all in from Xero. If you do have the Xero or the QuickBooks integrations enabled, then it switches the format of our invoice to actually match either Xero or QuickBooks. So obviously, feel free to take a look at that if you have turned on the integration, or if you haven't signed up yet and you want to have a play with that. So we can see on here some of the details that you might put in there. You can change all your settings, add your logo, all the standard things that you'd expect. And we can see here, this is actually creating a document or uploading a document into the system onto a client's portal, and also requesting an e-signature, in which case they'll get sent an email to let them know that that's there ready to be signed. I just missed where it just took us to there. Oh, custom forms. So one of the great features that we built last year was being able to create custom forms in any way you want in Accountancy Manager. The reason the whole thing came about was because of self-assessment and being able to send self-assessment checklists out to clients at the end of the 5th of April tax return period. and we've provided the template for that specific custom form, which you can go in and edit as you want. That custom form appears in the client's portal. They can go in, fill out the information, submit it. You get notified of that. If they're still missing information, then you can unmark it as submitted and it goes back to them, and you can have that back and forth communication with that particular form within Accountancy Manager. An absolutely wicked feature for gathering the right information, where they can then upload their documents that's relevant to that, to that form as well. And it just makes the whole process really quick and easy. And then once you've completed that job, you can send them a self-assessment tax return. They can e-sign it really quickly in the portal, and you can go ahead and file it. And both you and your clients can be anywhere in the world. You can all be on holiday doing these pieces of work, although probably shouldn't be working on holiday. But it's nice to have the ability to work wherever you are. And it just gives us a few different, it's just showing off some of the options there. We can see here a self-assessment checklist that gets created, and little eyes there, information signs to actually that you can add in to let your client know, what exactly it is that you're expecting from them, or what it means. So that's the end of this sort of short demo that I'm not sure how long I've spent going over it, but it's it really is an out-of-the-box CRM for accountants. We've ensured that all the fields are required, for accountants and bookkeepers, pre-populated templates and pre-populated letters of engagement. And that is the end of the short demo. And I'm just going to drop down, and we can leave it on that screen then, or I might stop sharing where we just talk briefly, Simon, if you've got some queries and things that have come in along the way.
Brilliant, James. Yes, definitely. Thank you. So just talk about price, because I know you talked about the discount. There's a couple of questions come in. One, is it per user? Is it per customers? Is the bands concurrent users? How does that work? And whilst you do that, I'll put the chat box, the URL for the website in the chat box. So if anybody wants to go and have a look, then they can.
Sure thing. So the way we've done it is when we first started Accountancy Manager, and it's just an interesting piece of information, I suppose, is we started off by charging on a per client basis, but it just didn't suit, it didn't suit small and it didn't suit big, and trying to find the right, the right place to price the system was quite tricky. And so in the end, we priced it at a per user basis, per user per month. So that's the way it's charged out. Now, the way that we've always seen it is that Accountancy Manager should be saving you the amount of time, at least the amount of time that you're paying for this system, and really it's so much more. I went from being able to invoice £80,000 a year to £100,000 a year by having had this system in place, and that's why it was built in the first place. I wanted to be able to invoice more clients, and the only way I was going to do that was to automate a lot of the back-end processes. That's what Accountancy Manager did for us, and that's just myself in the practice, let alone the other members in the team that were fee earners. So it's £39 per user per month. If you've got more than 7 users, then you can switch on to the enterprise plan, which actually drops the first 7 users down to £29 per user per month. And then as you go up in stages, it actually then starts to drop down to £20 per user. And then I believe it's 19, 18, 17. And if you've got over 30 users, it can drop down to as little as £16 per user per month. So it does go down based on number of users, and as an offer for the webinars, I've said we'll do £29 per user per month, even if you've got less than 7 users, and we might look to do something more on the enterprise packages. If you spoke to the sales team, I'm sure they'd accommodate you. If you pay annually, is an additional 20% discount off the back of that anyway. So that would drop it down to, I think, is it £23.20 without doing the without getting a calculator out, somewhere around that figure anyway. So that's what it works out at per user per month if you do pay the annual subscription rather than the monthly. So another little perk, little bonus, I suppose.
Excellent. Just to be clear, Jake.
Yeah,
just to be clear, because I'm not sure I picked up on it. Is a user a team member, or is it concurrent users? So you can have 4 people in at any one time, but it doesn't matter whether there's.
No, you can't be logged into the same system as another team member, and the reason being is that it doesn't really work very well like that, because you want to make sure that the team member that you're communicating with, that information has been logged on timelines and things, and if people are making changes in the system, that's being logged. Every team member should have their own task list. They don't want to be interacting with multiple other team members' task lists as well. So that's what we've tried to ensure is that, and the way that, 90% of our practices work is, and a lot of practices now would have two screens on their desk, and on the right hand screen, Accountancy Manager sits there throughout the day, all day long, and on the other screen, that's where they're doing their other pieces of work and things, because you're using that as your database, for everything that you're doing.
Brilliant, thank you. So just on the integration, now let me just flip back. So Andrew's asked, do all staff need to be a user, or can just two be a user for, say, the back end work?
It doesn't work very well like that, because people might say, well, we'll just get the admin staff on, and then obviously the fee earners that need to see their task list, that need to then be able to maybe track their time against it for profitability and all those kind of things. You lose so many features by trying to save on the cost, I suppose, by minimizing the users. And if we take, there was a large practice that I was speaking to, one of our practices, 25 user practice, and I was on a webinar with him yesterday, and he quoted that he saves at least 150 hours per month by using Accountancy Manager. Now, a smaller practice isn't going to save quite as many hours as that maybe, but if you think about an hourly rate that you might be charging out and what they've saved, I mean, that's humongous. I mean, you could say £100 an hour. I mean, somewhere around that, maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more. Some accountants might charge as much as £250 an hour. But when you take £100 as an example, that's 15 grand being saved over the course of £1,500, sorry, being saved over the course of each month. And so, as long as Accountancy Manager is saving you more than what it's costing you, then the cost is shouldn't really be an issue. And for the smaller practices, the 1 to 3 user practices, those guys, I mean, they haven't got lots of other staff to be taking on a lot of these jobs for them. So in some ways, it's even more beneficial to the smaller practices, because it's taking away all that admin for them, and all it's doing is freeing your time up. And you've got two choices if you get more time, haven't you? Either you use it to invoice more, or you use it maybe to spend with your family, or taking time to yourself.
Excellent, thank you. I'm just conscious of the time, so we've got 5 minutes. So we're going to start firing through James, if we can. Can you pay annually for one team member and monthly for other team members?
No, it's not an option on the billing side.
So I'm not quite sure. And then Paul has said that he has all of his AM and all staff need to be users for it to work properly. So that's there. I know we've had lots of conversations about integrations. Just quickly, is there an integration planned with T-sheets?
Not currently, no.
Excellent. No. And then we had a question beforehand about Zapier. So will you be opening up the system to be able to link with Zapier?
Yeah, 100%. It's already being investigated by the development team, by my dev team lead in particular, and he believes that it shouldn't be too big a task for us to take on. Again, I'm not going to give out any timescales. We made that mistake with QuickBooks some time ago, for anybody that's on here that knows about that, and also with Xero. So we don't give out timescales anymore. But the Zapier, because it's Zaps, isn't it? So it's, everyone pronounces it the two different ways. But yeah, absolutely, we're looking to put Zapier in place. Probably one of the main features there is probably communicating with Slack, for example, which I know some accountants use. It can be quite handy.
Brilliant, thank you. And then we've had a number of questions around getting data into the system, and one question about getting data out. So if I'm currently using RS Practice Management or something like that, how easy is it to get it in? And then if I need to get it out because I'm going somewhere else, or I just need to analyze it in Excel, how easy is it to get it out, James?
So, well, we'll start with getting it in first. So getting it in is, we give you literally a spreadsheet, which you download from Accountancy Manager once you're in the portal. Download that spreadsheet. It gives you all the columns that you could possibly think of, including which staff member might be responsible for a task, if you're really going into detail with it, which you can do. And we'd advise, because you can also put all the deadline dates in on there as well. If you don't put the time in at that early stage, and we're gonna struggle here with time, so I'm going to be as quick as I can. If you don't put the time in at the early stage, in terms of taking on a new software, when it might be a few hours of your time over the course of the week, for what's going to save you tens or even hundreds of hours of time over the course of the year, it is well worth blocking time out in your calendar when you are taking on any new software, because if you don't put that time in, it will cause you more problems later down the line. And by putting as much detail as you can onto our spreadsheet before re-importing it, it will, the idea behind it was that once you've imported it, all the tasks are set up, all of your staff users have got their tasks in front of them, and everything is ready to go. Now, if you want to use Iris, for example, where you're exporting the data from Iris or other products that are out there, as long as you can export them into Excel, which I haven't found one that you can't yet actually, then you can copy and paste that data onto our spreadsheet. As a side, we do not charge for support for all the kind of normal things that you would expect to be asking for. Telephone support, email support. We have a support team here on hand and a sales team that would be able to help you with some of those queries as well. But the main thing that I want to mention, the only side thing, sorry, that we might charge for is if you wanted us to assist you with getting your spreadsheet import into the system. It's quite a time-consuming job if there's a lot of data all over the place, and the support team will work with you on that and can quote you to do that piece of work once they've had an overview of it. So yeah, any external product that you want to download and then import into Accountancy Manager, we've never had any issues with it. And I believe that Iris is actually one of the more straightforward ones. Don't quote me, because the support team might shoot me for saying something like that that's incorrect. But I think Iris is more straightforward.
Brilliant. And getting the data out,
and getting the data out again, it's just an, you can just literally export the data back out again. And one of the ways that you might want to do that is you might want to turn on the zero sync, for example, get all the data coming in from zero, then export the spreadsheet. Then you might want to get that information put onto the import spreadsheet and then update it from there to save you maybe typing out lots of information and re-import it. But if you decided later down the line, for example, that Accountancy Manager wasn't the solution for you, then which I guess might be where the question's coming from, then you can just export all of your information out of the system and take it elsewhere.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you. Just any plans for integration with Tax Filer?
Tax Filer. We love Tax Filer, and we use Tax Filer in the practice that I was a part of before, and I got on really well with Paresh and James, and we were this close to integrating with Tax Filer. We'd been and sat down with them in their offices, and then they went quiet on us, and we all know what happened next is Iris bought them. So after Iris bought Tax Filer, there was a lot of silence. It just so happened that in the last 2 months, I have been communicating with Tax Filer and Iris, although I'm yet to hear back from them yet. They're quite tricky to communicate with. So we're trying our best with Tax Filer. I know what's going to come next, Tax Calc. Tax Calc, we sat down with those guys a couple of years ago. They were quite resistant to do any integrations. They might be more open to it now with the whole app stack thing being the big topic. We'll wait and see. I might reach out to Tax Calc again and see what they're thinking.
Okay, and just while we're talking about that selling out, there's a couple of questions about your long-term or longer-term future, whether you have any plans to be swallowed up by anybody else.
I don't think so. I mean, we have our way of doing things. I think what some of the big guns have tried to do is they've tried to replicate what Accountancy Manager does, but the feedback that we see across Accounting Web and other networks is they just don't come close. And what they should do is focus on what they do best, and we should focus on what we do best. And as it stands, there's no plans to be acquired by one of these big software vendors that's out there.
Brilliant, thank you. And I know we've just gone past the 2 o'clock, and a couple of people have said goodbye, but I'm just going to carry on. I've got 5 more questions. Jim, well as Robert, I can tell you that the Go Proposal integration is coming, and James is speaking to James next month, is what you said, didn't you? So I can knock that one off. So that's got us down. Oh, Marcus has very kindly worked out that it's £278.40 plus VAT for an annual payment per user. So that
my sales manager.
That solves the maths for us. Is the anti-money laundering done through Verify?
It is, yeah. That's right. That's exactly where it's done through. Yeah.
Brilliant. So that's answered that one very easily. How does, in your opinion, AM compare with Onco?
I think in terms of functionality, the amount of things that we've pulled under one roof exceeds a lot of the other products that are out there. I mean, we are looking at doing a review actually across all all this sort of different, all the different products, and maybe having a listing of sort of what we provide and what others don't, and what we don't provide and what they do. So we'll look to launch something through our marketing team in the coming months on that. But like I say, we've tried to bring everything under one roof, and I think the key thing is, and I know that Onco is built, their workflow systems are built by I can't remember the name of the lady and the gentleman that set up the company, but I know that they were both accountants previously. So like us, they've gone to do a similar thing. Their main focus seems to be around workflows, as opposed to maybe some of the other fancy functionality that we might that we obviously provide. But I wouldn't want to put them down at all. I just think it's around functionality, and it's what works best for your practice. So it's important when you're reviewing software to think, what am I missing, or what do I want to bring into one place when you're reviewing things like that.
Excellent, thank you. Can you add an accountant for a client that has been disengaged in order to send them documents via the system?
Can you add an accountant for a client which has been disengaged?
Yeah.
Can you add an accountant? Yes, because you've still got the field. The field doesn't go anywhere. So if you disengage the client, you've still got the field there for the previous accountant we're talking about.
No,
Sorry,
for the new accountant. So
for the new accountant.
Yeah. So I'm sending all the documentation to the new accountant via their professional clearance letter. So can I do that via the portal?
You've got access to the documents, so you can send those documents. Yeah, you can send those documents on to the new accountant if you choose to. Yeah, using Accountancy Manager. Yeah.
Brilliant, isn't it? I told you I love the questions. The questions are the best bit of these conversations for me, because people come up with all sorts of things that you never even dreamed of. So
I thought, shall I get one of my support team members on the call with us? But I thought, no, I'll try and field it as best as I can. But obviously, if there are queries that people have got which I'm unable to answer in a lot of detail, support's free. Get in touch with the technical support team.
Brilliant. Last two questions then from Kim. How easy is it to set up if you have no formalized systems?
So depending on where your data is, because I expect you've got your data somewhere. So maybe on an Excel spreadsheet, for example. I mean, bearing in mind that Accountancy Manager was built from a practice that had no real formalized system. They had the spreadsheets, and so we imported all that data into the system to get it up and running. But I think one of the benefits then for somebody like that is, because of all the templates that we've got set up and ready to go, all those systems and things that you're doing, Accountancy Manager, having been built by accountants, should work really nicely for you, because all the hard work's been done.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you. And then the last question, I'll just put the URL in the chat box again for anybody that has missed it, because it's all scrolled off. From Andrew, from Hiten, what secure document exchange module are you using?
What module are we using?
Yeah, is you were sharing the sign-off thing earlier, the e-signing. Is that yours? Is that specific to you? Is that your software?
That's not an integrated product. That is, we have built all of that from scratch. It's all our own servers that store the data. We have security checks that are done on our systems regularly. We've never had a data breach in that sense, where we've had an attack on any of those documents or anything like that in the 3 years that we've been running. It's all secure and safe and our own.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you. That's Portal Hiten. Brilliant. Thank you. Andrew, I've got your question and I don't quite understand it. So if you want to fire that through to me, Andrew, on LinkedIn, or email it to me, or email James, and then I will gladly come back to you with that answer. That's cleared that. I think I've covered every single subject that I wanted to cover in some way, shape or form, James. So it just leaves me to say thank you to everybody that's come along to have the conversation and ask the questions. As always, I'm inspired by the questions that people ask, because they're far better questions that I would ask if I was sat here on my own talking to you, James. So that's really, really good. And thank you to James for giving up your time and for let's just say exposing yourself, if you like, to the or being vulnerable is probably a better question, a better statement. Being vulnerable to the questions from the community. So thank you very much for coming along, James.
Thank you. Can I just mention one thing, Simon? If people want to use the referral code as Socks Up Simon, that would probably be good for us to identify that you've come in from the webinar, if you are wanting to sign up and take advantage of the webinar offer.
Brilliant. So just go to that URL and put the code in Socks Up Simon, or identify Socks Up Simon somehow, and then they'll know that you've come from here to get the discounts. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So again, yeah, thank you very much for everybody coming, and thank you to James, and we'll say bye-bye for now until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.